Welcome. We are broadcasting live from the mothership. You are tuned in and listening to Starseed Energy Radio with your host Jonah Bolt. Starseed Energy Radio, where you can always tune in to hear the colors and see the music. Starseed Energy Radio goes live in 3, 2, 1.
All right, what's up, Spaceship Earth? Thanks for tuning in. You are now receiving a live transmission from Starseed Radio, where you can always tune in to hear the colors and see the music. I'm your host, Jonah Bolt, the Octorian Starseed, and today is Thursday, September 17th, 2015. We have an awesome show lined up for you today. We're being joined by two very special guests, Gabriel Cavazos, and also the famous Charles Gilchrist, a wealth of knowledge and information when it comes to sacred geometry. But first, before we get into our special guests, I want to give a shout out to StarseedRadio.com, where you can always find the latest news and updates. And also, please check out StarseedTechnologies.com. Fill out our form there. I'd love to send you about 15 PDF files on free energy, earth batteries, solar, all different amazing information. So please call us or fill out the form at starseedtechnologies.com. Our toll-free number as well is 888-400-2328. Also, please check out SynergyOneness.com. This is the new webinar we've been talking about. We have 4 amazing panelists coming up next Sunday, September 27th. We have Dan Winter, Dave Parker, David Sarita, talking about crystal and vortex energy, and we have Sterling Allen from SciWiki. We have 4 amazing guests, so we hope everyone can join us. And after the webinar, we're going to be sending every registered participant over 2,000 pages in PDF form about free energy, how to build free energy devices, all different generators, open source, schematics, as well as we're going to send you all the latest information, projects, papers, everything that is the latest and the most up-to-date information and stuff from all of our panelists. So you'll also receive not just 2,000 pages on free energy stuff, but all of our panelists are also going to update us with their latest studies, findings, and projects and things like that. So again, check out SynergyOneness.com. It is limited seating, so please register as soon as you can, SynergyOneness.com. And again, for a free piece of Elite Shungite, that is an amazing quantum healing stone, you can call toll-free 888-400-2328. Call us anytime, 24/7. Leave us a message and a voicemail if you do not reach someone live. With that, we're going to get started with our daily quote of the day. And the daily quote goes a little something like this. Highly evolved people have their own conscience as pure law. Again, highly evolved people have their own conscience as pure law. That quote from Lao Tzu, Lautzu. That is from thewisdomwarrior.com. With that, we're going to get started with our daily download. Ryan Matthew Dernick is not able to join us today. So with that, I'm going to go over the latest news and updates, and I do have to report that yesterday's show was not recorded. We had a Skype update or something like that on the back end. So unfortunately, the show is not recorded, so we're going to have to redo the show yesterday. I do apologize to Kelly and also to Portal to Ascension, to Neil, that came on the show and really had an amazing interview and radio show. So we apologize for that. But that was not recorded. So we are back live today, so I'm going to go over some of the latest news and headlines. Ryan Matthew Dernick is on an interview call right now. He's trying to get a job, so he just messaged me he's not going to be able to join us. So with that, I'll go over some latest news and updates. One of the latest and greatest things in the News today is the huge tsunami that was about, I think it was 4 meters, about 12 feet high, that hit Chile, had an 8.3 magnitude earthquake yesterday, and Chile was hit with a tsunami about 12 feet high. It's reported about a dozen people have died. They did evacuate many people as fast as they can, unlike in 2010, where they also had a tsunami where over 500 people died because they did not evacuate the beach areas. So it's good to see that Chile is responding better in a time like this. 8.3 hit off the coast of Chile, about 63 miles deep. And that is a big story all over the world today because it is on the Ring of Fire, which means when a big tectonic plate shifts like that, you are probably most likely going to see a shift in other tectonic plates on the Ring of Fire, which Costa Rica is. So shout out to all my friends and peeps in Costa Rica. Keep safe. Florida orders dairy to mislabel all-natural skim milk with imitation label to mislead consumers. That's right. A legislator here in Florida, during a hearing, Chief Judge Robert Hinkle of the U.S. District Court for Northern Florida said, "It's hard to call this imitation milk. It came right out of the cow. Anyone who reads imitation skim milk would think it didn't come out of a cow." Well, he's right. To me, that's common sense. But as we see, Monsanto and other lobbying parties do not want organic and food like that out there. So this is something that is a story you should pay attention to. Imagine that on real milk, they're going to put imitation, but on cloned milk, which is coming from cloned cows, cloned meat, cloned products, are not required by the FDA to be labeled as clone. What a paradigm we're living in. Next article, the pharmaceutical industry is one of the most loathed sectors in the United States, sitting alongside big oil and the federal government. That's right. People in the U.S. hate big pharma, study finds. The title says 43% of participants in a survey by Gallup reported negative views on the industry compared to 35% who expressed positive news. This leaves the industry with a negative net positive rating, -8 in 2015. Well, we all know that pharmaceutical drugs are not good for you. We do not want them. And there is a natural cure and remedy for any type of dis-ease you can possibly think of. So that's what I have to say about pharmaceutical companies. U.S. gold reserves bottom out as Europe's banks seek financial independence. European central banks keep demanding the return of their gold bullion from the vaults of the Federal Reserve in New York. Well, that sounds like a pretty okay request. Reducing the gold stockpile kept under the streets of Manhattan to its lowest level in decades. Let's not forget, after 9/11, all the gold bullion in the big vault under the World Trade Center buildings, when they went down there, the vault doors were wide open and all the gold was gone. I wonder what happened to all that gold the day of 9/11. Interesting. Another top story headline coming in, this one from investmentwatchblog.com. Psychiatric medications kill over 500,000 people annually a year. The FDA understates the number of suicides. This dovetails with the other article I just said, which is pharmaceutical drugs are on their way out. People are waking up all over the planet to natural remedies. Cannabis cures cancer. The FDA just put that on their website 2 weeks ago, that cannabis is a cure for cancer. I mean, that's huge news in itself. I mean, that's just, amazing news that people can even, see that or hear that on the FDA website. Another top article coming in, and this one is from SputnikNews.com. Twitter slammed with class action lawsuit claiming Privacy Act and privacy violations. This is not a new story. It's an old story. We know that Facebook and Twitter and all these other places are basically just copying everything, listening to your conversations, storing your data, totally against privacy in any form. So an old story, but a new one. Twitter slammed with the class action lawsuit. What else is new? This one is rare film clips show H.W. Bush plotting with Monsanto to use U.S. government to spread GMO imperialism. That's right. In reality, however, GMO seeds and foods created in the lab are far different than the traditional hybrid crop. In fact, the latter has only been in existence for a few decades. This clip and also this article goes on to say how Bush was directly involved with dealing with Monsanto and regulating and getting the spread of GMO out to the world. So I'm going to go ahead and vote Mr. George H.W. Bush as our Game of Thrones person of the day. The official Game of Thrones person today, George H.W. Bush. I'll post these articles and the rest of them up on starseedradio.com, where you can always find the latest news and updates, and also to our Twitter feed and other media outlets that we reach. With that, we're going to jump to our main guests of the show. We have two exciting guests joining us today. Both have been on the show before, but we like having them both back on because of the awareness that they bring, the truth that they speak, and also the involvement that they have with the awakening of the planet. And when we talk about awakening, we're talking about people waking up to a real sustainable future and taking part in building that sustainable future rather than sitting on the couch watching football, drinking beer, watching American to the Stars, which most America is doing today. Our first guest, and I'll do a little bio on him, is Gabriel Cavazos. He has over 30 years in the biotech and development industry with building not just eco-friendly and organic composite type of structures, but he comes from a long background of being totally immersed in the 3D building of, an example, the Fontainebleau Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas. So Jay has worked on many big projects, had his own awakening, and shifted his awareness and consciousness to what he's doing now, which is ARCOTU.com, ARCOTU.com, which is really using some amazing technologies, which we'll get into here in just a minute. But his commitment is to health and wellness and building communities towards a sustainable future. Now, our second guest, who will also be joining us on the show, is Charles Gilchrist, who many of you may already know. Charles Gilchrist is a world leader, I would say, in the realm of sacred geometry. Charles has been known for his sacred geometry paintings from all over the world, and also for his lectures, workshops, and his teaching and understanding of sacred geometry. So we're going to talk about on the show today a little bit about what is sacred geometry, what are the meanings of it, what are the patterns, what does it mean to raise your vibration with sacred geometry. Very important questions that many people, many listeners have asked over the years. So with that, I'm going to welcome Jay and also our next guest, Charles, onto the show. Thank you both for coming on the air. How are you?
Very good, Jonah. Thank you once again for having us on board.
Absolutely. And is Charles with us?
Yes, I am.
Excellent. Great. Well, thank you both for coming on. And I think let's start off with you, Jay, if you can give us a little background. We know that you had your awakening several years ago, which puts you in the forefront of what you're doing now, which is building sustainably using organic, 100% renewable type of technologies. Amazing stuff. But just give us a little backdrop, Jay, on your history, the build-up, your awakening, and then how you first came to meet Charles Gilchrist.
Wonderful. Well, I've had a very long, extensive career in what I like to refer to as conventional construction, land development for over 30 years. And I have been on a somewhat spiritual journey pretty much all of my life. And about 10 years ago, that journey began to transform my own mentality and awakening, as you said earlier, to consciousness and issues of environmental conservation and health and wellness, and all these things started to get into my mind stream, and I began really intense studies in across the board areas of all of these issues. And as I was doing that, it was beginning to really cause me to question what it was that I was participating in with respect to my occupation. And about 7 or 8 years ago, when I was on the project of the Fontainebleau Casino Hotel Resort in Las Vegas, it really hit home for me, especially the one day that I decided that it was my last day to be involved with conventional design construction. And that day I walked onto the site, and at that time the project was well underway, and we had over 5,000 workers daily working on this project. A mass amount of traffic happening with the delivery of materials, equipment, on and on and on. It was like walking in to this complete toxic bubble. And when I got out of my car, I stood up and I just took a look at everything, and it just hit me almost instantly, Jonah. And I, at that moment, decided I needed to walk in and talk to Roger McCaffrey, who was the head of Turnberry West, who the project belonged to, and inform him that I was about to resign to my contract. And it was basically that fast. It was like almost instantly. I had been on this journey of conversion well before that, but that day was the D-Day for me. And I went in and said, I'm done. And I haven't looked back since. Meeting Charles almost 5 years ago was the catalyst that actually caused me to actually propel myself into the understanding, obviously, of sacred geometry and how sacred geometry plays its part in every aspect of our existence. And as I began to study with Charles, and I have been fortunate enough to be under the tutelage and mentorship of Charles for over 4 years, every single day of my life. We work together every single day. And that has radically transformed my own consciousness and how sacred geometry plays a part in my own life, my existence, and the occupation of making the change from the standardized construction world into the future of bioenvironmental behavior and how that applies to my architecture and engineering today with ARCOTU. So with Charles on the line, Charles, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for this last almost 5 years of your tutelage and teachings. And today, Charles and I worked extremely close with ARCOTU and the projects that we have on the table.
Excellent, thank you. And Charles, if you would please give us a background on your history. When did you first get introduced to sacred geometry? Have you been drawing sacred geometry, painting sacred geometry since you were a kid, or is there something you learned about? What was your first sort of awakening towards the realm and world of sacred geometry?
That's a good question. I've always been an artist, basically, from the time I was small. I was aware, before I was 4 years old, that I was given this talent, this artistic talent, and I perceived that it was an assignment, like assignment from the creative force behind the universe. Somehow I had been given these skills, and I thought that there was some purpose there, although I wasn't totally sure what it was. I was completely convinced that I was an artist. I guess that's the only really unusual thing about me. I understood what I wanted to do for my entire life when I was a very small person, and it was a long history of attempting to be a serious artist in the middle of a very commercial world. And my interest in art I was primarily influenced by the Surrealists, which are, as far as I'm concerned, Surrealism was the major movement of the last century, and it's about self-investigation. So I was interested in investigating my own psychology, my own inner workings, and expressed it through this medium of sacred geometry. And eventually, I got involved in I had like a rebirthing experience when I was 30 years old, which pointed me straight at what I really wanted to do, and that process of creating surrealistic work eventually led me to mandala, the concepts of mandala, and through my studies of the history of mandala making, and I perceived the the spiritual nature of geometry. I could see that it was, in fact, an aspect of the world which was completely unchangeable. And I saw the perfection of it. I saw the sacredness of it. And then almost immediately I was introduced to sacred geometry through Drunvalo Melchizedek, which I know you've spoken to. So that's how it basically happened.
Love Drunvalo. A big motivator in my life. I'm happy to hear that he was in yours too. Great. I hope people check him out, Drunvalo Melchizedek.
Right. So that's basically how I was introduced in sacred geometry. When I discovered that, I said, "Aha! This is it. This is what I've been looking for all my life. This is truth and beauty at the universal level." And it completely changed my life. And over the years, my study of sacred geometry has really radically altered my consciousness completely. So there was a certain point there where I was pretty much a loner, pretty much reclusive, doing my own personal growth. And I wasn't really particularly interested in what was going on in the rest of the world. I thought we were all going to hell in a handbasket, and I was completely self-involved. And then there was a moment when I said, "Oh my God, this stuff I'm learning through sacred geometry, this effect that sacred geometry is having on me, I can't just sit here and like exist in this bliss without trying to share it." And so I think at that time I turned into a teacher in a way, and I felt motivated to try to express what I was experiencing to as many people as I possibly could. And so now I am completely dedicated to the expansion of human consciousness, because I believe that that's the entire secret right there for this renaissance that we're in the middle of, this holistic renaissance. And I'm part of it. I'm part of the system that's bringing this information forward.
Excellent. I totally agree with that, Charles, and I know, Jay, you do too. We're entering a new age of renaissance, a new age of creativity. People with the ADHD and the DHD and all these labels that I've been labeled with my whole life and medicated for to try to stop our pineal gland and fluoridate our pineal gland, which is naturally opening up to the energies of the planet and what's happening. This new renaissance age of creativity is sweeping the planet, and that's really what's happening, what we see. So it's amazing that all of us are really part of ushering in this new age of creativity and doing that. Before we take a commercial break, we're going to take a commercial break in a few minutes. I want to go into what is sacred geometry. How do we apply those type of sacred geometry patterns to our lifestyle, where to put them feng shui wise, mandalas, what does sacred geometry do to raise our vibration? If you would, Charles, if you could talk a little bit about sacred geometry and where it's found throughout history. We see the flower of life all through ancient Asia, all through South America. Can you talk a little bit about where sacred geometry has been found in the past?
Well, it's there universally. The perfections of sacred geometry. Actually, sacred geometry is the root. The root. It's based on the root realities of geometry, and so the sacredness of it is the fact that it's completely universal, unchanging. The circle is the circle, and it always was the circle, and it always will be the circle. And the relationship between the diameter of the circle to the circumference of the circle, which is, of course, is the same as pi. That's the proportion between the diameter of the circle and the circumference of the circle. Those numbers have always been there, and they always will be there. We did not invent the whole thing. We just discovered it. So it's been around for as long as human beings have been around at some level, influencing us. And some people saw it and have investigated it all over the world. It's so sacred geometry is the architecture of the universe, literally the architecture of the universe. And if you want to count on something that doesn't change, then sacred geometry is the thing. The other thing that I think is really important as it relates to what we're talking about, it's this holistic movement that we're involved in. This renaissance that we're involved with is basically a renaissance of the holistic reality. People are waking up to the oneness of the universe, and interestingly enough, the very root archetype of sacred geometry is the single point, which is the root archetype of sacred geometry. So, all the great religions over the span of human history have tried to point us towards the experience of gnosis, to the experience of unity, oneness. And interestingly enough, that is the root archetype of sacred geometry. Unity expressed geometrically is a single point. And sacred geometry evolves through the division of the single point, which is very aligned to scientific thought, in the sense of the
hang on,
the Big Bang.
Right there, Charles. We have to take a commercial break, and when we get back, we'll start off right where we stopped, and we're going to get a little bit to more about what is sacred geometry and how we can apply it in your life. You're listening to Starseed Radio. We'll be right back after these messages.
Little red bone fire starter from the southeast. Run with the warriors, armors on my chest plate. Meet you with the battle horns, blaring at the west gate. No time for dead weight. I'm moving vertically. Will I miss the planet when I blast off? Certainly. Don't take it personally. Earthers don't understand.
The greatest form of control is where you think you're free when you're being fundamentally manipulated and dictated to. One form of dictatorship is being in a prison cell and you can see the bars and touch it. The other one is sitting in a prison cell but you can't see the bar, you think you're free. What the human race is suffering from is mass hypnosis. We are being hypnotized by people like this. Newsreaders, politicians, teachers, lecturers. We are in a country and in a world that is being run by unbelievably sick people. The chasm between what we're told is going on and what is really going on is absolutely enormous.
All right, welcome back to the show. You're listening to Starseed Radio. That is a little clip from David Icke. You're listening to Starseed Radio. Check us out on starseedradio.com for the latest news and updates, as well as check out our synergyoneness.com webinar coming up over the next 5 months. Have Laura Eisenhower and many other amazing people, just like our guest today, Charles Gilchrist, on the Earth part of the sacred geometry. We're joined by Gabriel Cavazos and also Charles Gilchrist, one of the foremost people in the world on sacred geometry. Now, before we went to commercial break, Charles, you were talking about sacred geometry. If you would, let's dive in a little bit deeper. What is sacred geometry in terms of how does it help heal? How does it help raise the vibration? When people hear sacred geometry, it's hard for them, as an example, a teenager to understand, well, what does that mean? So it's the flower of life. What is the flower of life? How does the imprint, the visual flower of life raise your vibration? How does that sacred geometry itself induct the natural laws of energy, like we've seen now with crop circles and other ancient signs and hieroglyphs? What does sacred geometry do specifically that allows the energy to be raised, allows your vibration to be raised? If you can go into a little bit of that, that'd be great.
All right, I will try. What is sacred geometry? Geometry is a language, a universal language, and the forms of sacred geometry, all these archetypes that we see, they have a tremendous appeal to our intuitive sensibilities. So they appeal to what you would call right brain energies. We feel them. We feel them. That's why most people are being drawn to sacred geometry. It's an intuitive thing. At the same time, the mathematics of sacred geometry is perfect. So it also appeals to our left brain. So this is one of the major aspects of sacred geometry, that it appeals to our intuitive sensibilities and our rational sensibilities simultaneously, which is really potent, a very potent energy. So when I was first involved in sacred geometry, and I got totally into it, I tried to talk to people. They thought I was completely mad. This was back in the early 1980s, and there was basically very, very few people that were dealing with this stuff. Somehow I found it, and I was completely turned on. I wanted to try to talk to people about it, but most everybody was just completely over their head. But what's happening now is, all these years later, suddenly there's multiple, thousands and thousands of people all over the world, maybe hundreds of thousands of people that are being intuitively drawn to this discipline, and it's affecting us in a very deep subconscious way. You don't have to have any interest in mathematics or science to be drawn to sacred geometry, and it affects us in a very potent way. And the way that I can express it is, it's a timeless perfection. And when we see it, it has a tremendous effect on us. And one of the things I've done to help people really start to feel this is to create a group of graphics, like coloring book graphics, that are free on my website. And my suggestion is, if you want to understand sacred geometry, is to play with it, is just to start hanging out with it. And what happens is these forms, the forms of sacred geometry, when we hold them in our attention, they start affecting us at very, very, very profound levels. And the language, we're feeling the language, and that's basically what happens through this process. We start to feel an intimate connection with the entire universe. That's the whole motion towards gnosis, and that's why sacred geometry affects virtually everybody that gets involved with it. Gabriel's a perfect example. He's one of my best students, maybe my finest student. He has been radically altered by his study of sacred geometry, and I didn't have anything to do with it except that I just pointed them and tried to find words that would help him discover what was going on. It's a lifetime study. You could study it forever, and the more time you spend with it, the more you feel it, the more it affects you. So I don't know if that's a decent explanation or not, but
absolutely. I think that as an example for me, Charles and Jay, when I first understood that the patterns itself, like the flower of life, inducted laws of natural energy and brought in a higher vibration, just the symbol itself, for me, I was like, well, that's easy. The rest of my life, I'm only going to get sacred geometry tattoos, because I like to get, I have tattoos. And, for me, I was like, whoa, now if I tattoo the flower of life, it actually helps raise the vibration. It's understanding and translating it to ways down to my generation that is into the tech world, the Burning Man world, the getting tattoos, things like that, and bringing back the tribalism. Every tribe on the planet was tattooed. Every tribe had markings. Everyone, had ceremony. Every tribe understood, at least maybe not the in-depth sacred geometry, but they understood that the patterns and the sacred spirals and those just shapes themselves help to raise the vibration, and we see that all over now. So yes, great explanation. And Jay, if you could jump in now and sort of dovetail on that, with your designing and bioengineering and now working with Charles, how have you integrated sacred geometry into what you're doing now, which is community development, new technologies, and other projects you're working on?
Well, Charles's explanation is one that I really enjoy, because he has an incredible simplistic way of conveying what many people view as a complex idea into somewhat layman's terms, so just about anybody could actually begin to be attracted to the study of sacred geometry and how it actually is the architecture of the universe, which is how we came up with the name ARCOTU. ARCOTU is an acronym for Architecture of the Universe, and of course, Charles is the designer of our logo, and in that logo, what he captured was the infinite possibilities of what sacred geometry is capable of in each and every one of our lives, in every area of our lives. Perfect example for me is my lifelong association to action sports, music, and martial arts. When I began to study with Charles and began to lock on to the understanding of it, these ideas that Charles says, when you begin to play with mandala and your understanding of how sacred geometry is the foundation of learning that, all of a sudden you start connecting these dots. And I slowly started doing that in my first beginning study with Charles. And now that I'm almost 5 years into this study with Charles, it has, as he says, radically transformed my own consciousness and how sacred geometry plays a direct, tangible aspect in what I do as a bioenvironmental design architect engineer with all the projects that we are doing now. And that's all I do now is this eco-sustainable orientation. Now I've completely left the conventional construction land development world. We are all 100% in with what we are doing with the future of bioenvironmental design. So it has taken me from a completely beginning understanding of sacred geometry into more advanced areas now. And I have been able to transcend through stages. People will find out as they begin to study and pay attention to sacred geometry that you will evolve into these different locations of understanding and propels you to a new level as your awareness of the consciousness of it begins to actually take place in your life. You don't even realize it's happening. Then all of a sudden one day, bingo, another light turns on and you're propelled to another level. This has happened several times during the last 4+ years with Charles. And every time it happens, it's amazing what synchronicity plays a part in this in terms of timing and how it happens in your life and the things that you're working on at that time. Charles is right now working on an amazing, profound masterpiece that will ultimately end up residing in our project in North Carolina with Dr. Daniel Stickler and Dr. Michael Hamilton in what is the Synchronicity Wellness Project. They have transformed their medical model into the new Apeiron model that is going to be the project, a huge U.S. project that we're involved with right now. And this new piece that Charles calls North Carolina Phi Spiral is an actual representation for me of the entire evolution of this evolvement that I've been involved with Charles to this point. It encompasses everything that we were talking about this just the other night, and I was telling Charles how this piece is immensely influencing the design of this project right now directly. So this is one of the things that I'm really happy about and pleased about, to be able to take this study and transform it into a tangible a tangible resource that people can connect with in what I'm doing with bioenvironmental design.
And
Can I interject?
I was going to say,
something?
if you could dovetail on that and talk about the designs of the synchronicity, so the actual sacred geometry of it. How does that going to raise vibration? How does that work? And please, continue.
Well, one of the really interesting things that I find in my teaching experiences, I occasionally get a really serious student, and inevitably, their study of sacred geometry, and Gabriel included, especially included, they will take the information that I give them, and they will run it through their own personal experience, and they will come up with ways of drawing correspondence in their own particular direction, their own personal direction. So the ideas that Gabriel has come up with, the way to use sacred geometry, the way he's using it, is unique for personal for him, and that's what happens. People amaze me that they can take this information that I'm giving them, and then use it in a way that I would have never dreamed could happen. That's one of the beautiful things, that it's so correspondent. Sacred geometry, in the end, is so correspondent to everybody that exists that they will get something very, very personal out of it, and it will change their life in a particular way that's different than it will change another person's life. I think that's really significant.
It's truly significant, because as you begin to understand the architecture of the universe, which is sacred geometry, and it begins to really infiltrate your consciousness, you cannot help but view our existence in a completely new, elevated manner. It's impossible for it not to happen. And as you continue to allow yourself to discover more and more and more, that enlightenment just continues to elevate by the moment. And that's exactly what has happened with my tutelage under Charles and our efforts together with ARCOTU. We are headed into really new frontier orientation of the future of sustainability. We have so many things going on right now that's contributory to the future of bioenvironmental behavior design. And I love to use the word behavior because I view my participation in biodesign in a manner of what we view in our anatomy as cell structure, because it is all subject to signaling, environmental signal. And that is what's pushing us and moving us forward to the future of realizing living structure.
And I think that when you look back at like every ancient site, sacred site, the pyramids, the different buildings, the structures all over the world, they all tie into sacred geometry. They're aligned to different star systems. They're using, the phi ratio. They're using all these different sacred geometry patterns.
It's true.
And
it's totally true.
And crop circles. What do you think they're telling us when you talk about crop circles and pyramids, Charles and Jay? What do you think the ancients knew that maybe humankind today is ignoring?
Well, I think for me, Charles, if I could say this real quick, hold your thought for 1 second. For me, the additional introduction to biogeometry plays a huge part in this question for me. Dr. Abraham Karim is the founder, or at least he is not the founder. He discovered biogeometry and was able to transcend it into a name, BG3. And the study of that is a qualitative form of proving that sacred geometry is, in fact, the architecture of the universe. So to be able to actually utilize that scientific element in conjunction with the understanding of sacred geometry has opened up completely new opportunities and possibilities for me.
So I'd like to add something that's really interesting about the history. If you bring up a person that I'm very fond of, black elk, Native American. Perhaps some of you have read Black Elk Speaks, which I highly recommend. Now here's a supposed primitive, no real scientific understanding at all, and yet the philosophy and the orientation that the Native American people had to geometry was undeniable. I mean, they were so tuned into the four directions and the four corners, which is a potent part of sacred geometric reality. They were geometrically oriented. And when I read the book the first time, that was before I discovered mandala. And then after I discovered mandala, I reread Black Elk Speaks. The connection was obvious. It was totally obvious. So so many examples of this throughout history of people being drawn to these realities in all different kinds of ways and in all different kinds of approaches, and completely unique, except still directly related. The Aborigines in Australia also were dealing with Dreamtime concepts, and their art was very, very geometric in nature. So it's working. It's been working forever in every single culture, and at all different kinds of levels. I mean, you're talking about sacred sites. Almost always they have some kind of direct relationship to sacred geometry, and it's functional all the time, constantly, and we don't even know it.
Well, that's a great point, Charles, because when we talk about ancient architecture, there's no question in my mind that ancient civilization was totally in tune to all of sacred geometry. Because when you look back at that time in history, the technology to be able to support erection of something like the Giza pyramids without modern day technology, it would be impossible to do that if you were not in tune totally with the universal energies of sacred geometry, biogeometry, and the entire understanding of our universe's energy force. So without question, what we are trying to do with ARCOTU and our efforts is to do two things: back up, rediscover what they were using, and move forward in conjunction with that to the future of today's modern technology, which I do believe has to be re-influxed with the spiritual aspects of ancient knowledge. That is what we are doing with all of the development of our future technology.
Absolutely.
Yeah, one of the interesting things I think is in the area of glyphs, in the area of ancient people marking on stone walls, marking shapes. The oldest glyphs in the world are spirals. Some of them are over 40,000 years old. So here's these ancient people, supposedly primitive, perceiving the potency of the spiral, which is directly related to sacred geometry, especially the phi ratio, the golden mean proportion. That spiral is a root aspect of sacred geometry, and here these ancient people felt that, and felt it in such a potent way that they would actually go to the trouble of creating spirals on rocks. I find that to be really significant myself.
It's totally significant. And another thing for everyone out there that are listening, some of these concepts that we're actually talking, Charles and I are both booked as featured presenters in the forthcoming Resonate Asheville 215 in North Carolina on October 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, primarily the 4th. We will be broadcasting that event live. And for those of you who can't be in the Asheville area, you can subscribe to see this live on bigctv.com. And you will be able to see in our presentations, Charles actually on Sunday He goes on for an hour prior to me coming on, and we have a transition period between our presentations that will like visually show some of the things that we're actually talking about at this moment on ancient methodologies of what we're talking about. So anyone out there who does have the time to tune in, I encourage everyone who can't make it and attend this event to at least try and see it on our live stream broadcast, pay-per-view broadcast. You could
before we end, we have about three minutes left or so. Charles, I wanted to bring up a person who's very special to my heart, Buckminster Fuller. Talk a little bit about Bucky's role in sacred geometry, the geodesic dome, if you can, a little bit, please.
Well, there's an obvious example of somebody who was completely plugged in to what we're talking about, and so far ahead of everybody that it was kind of, ridiculous. And Tesla was the same kind of a being. So there's always been these amazing visionaries that could see way further than most people can. And Buckminster Fuller was obviously one of the major guys there. We still haven't got everything that he had to give us. That's for sure.
Bucky Fuller was an amazing pioneer. His concepts were so far ahead of its time that today, we, as far as I'm concerned, we are just touching the surface of the profound work that he left for us to discover. And so it is individuals of that nature who have opened the doors for individuals like Charles and Drew Below and Dan Winters and all of these amazing minds that have dedicated their lives to discovery and the understanding of our universe. And myself being one of them as well, I am dedicated to continue to discover everything and how it associates to our human anatomy, life source itself, and the connection of the structures that we work, live, and play in.
I would like to say one more thing, if I have a minute left.
Sure, absolutely.
This energy, this language that sacred geometry is supplying us is so potent. I believe I'm a very serious meditator. I got involved in transcendental meditation when I was 30 years old, and my work is intrinsically meditational. And I believe that the forms of sacred geometry are the visual equivalent of mantra. So when you hold your attention to these forms, they will set up a meditational states in your own consciousness. And I think that that's one of the reasons why sacred geometry is so potent, because it's affecting us in a meditational way, moving us deeper and deeper and deeper into the realities of the universe.
Excellent. Well, thank you both so much for coming on Starseed Radio. And, of course, check out Synergy Oneness. We're going to have Charles Gilchrist on the Earth Sacred Geometry webinar coming up next month. And, again, your website is charlesgilchrist.com. And then we also have ARCOTU.com and Cavcon Industries. You could or Google Charles Gilchrist or J. Gabriel Cavazos. Thank you both for just everything in your service you're doing and the light you're bringing. It's just amazing. And we will have you guys back on the show soon. Thank you again.
Jonah, thank you so much for having us.
Yes, thank you. Have a great day. We'll speak to you all soon. You're listening to Starseed Radio.
Look at the Gulf of Japan. Could they have really planned it? Heading for the iceberg like the Titanic. Atlantic mystery. Atlantis white from history. The truth about the pyramids in ancient Mayan prophecy. Space odyssey. Look into the anomalies and you will find suppression of free energy technology.
8400-2328. Also, please check out SynergyOneness.com. This is the new webinar we've been talking about. We have 4 amazing panelists coming up next Sunday, September 27th. We have Dan Winter, Dave Parker, David Sarita, talking about crystal and vortex energy, and we have Sterling Allen from SciWiki. We have 4 amazing guests, so we hope everyone can join us. And after the webinar, we're going to be sending every registered participant over 2,000 pages in PDF form about free energy, how to build free energy devices, all different generators, open source, schematics, as well as we're going to send you all the latest information, projects, papers, everything that is the latest and the most up-to-date information and stuff from all of our panelists. So you'll also receive not just 2,000 pages on free energy stuff, but all of our panelists are also going to update us with their latest studies, findings, and projects and things like that. So again, check out synergyoneness.com. It is limited seating, so please register as soon as you can, synergyoneness.com. And again, for a free piece of elite shungite, that is an amazing quantum healing stone, you can call toll-free 888-400-2328. Call us anytime, 24/7. Leave us a message and a voicemail if you do not reach someone live.
Welcome. We are broadcasting live from the mothership. You are tuned in and listening to Starseed Energy Radio with your host, Jonah Bolt. Starseed Energy Radio, where you can always tune in to hear the colors and see the music. Starseed Energy Radio goes live in 3, 2, 1.
All right, what's up, Spaceship Earth? Thanks for tuning in. You are now receiving a live transmission from Starseed Radio, where you can always tune in to hear the colors and see the music. I'm your host, Jonah Bolt, the Octorian Starseed, and today is Thursday, September 17th, 2015. We have an awesome show lined up for you today. We're being joined by 2 very special guests, Gabriel Cavazos and also the famous Charles Gilchrist, a wealth of knowledge and information when it comes to sacred geometry. But first, before we get into our special guests, I want to give a shout out to StarseedRadio.com, where you can always find the latest news and updates. And also, please check out StarseedTechnologies.com. Fill out our form there. I'd love to send you about 15 PDF files on free energy, earth batteries, solar, all different amazing information. So please call us or fill out the form at starseedtechnologies.com. Our toll-free number as well is 884 meters, about 12 feet high. That hit Chile, had an 8.3 magnitude earthquake yesterday, and Chile was hit with a tsunami about 12 feet high. It's reported about a dozen people have died. They did evacuate many people as fast as they can, unlike in 2010, where they also had a tsunami where over 500 people died because they did not evacuate the beach areas. So it's good to see that Chile is responding better in a time like this. 8.3 hit off the coast of Chile, about 63 miles deep. And that is a big story all over the world today because it is on the Ring of Fire, which means when a big tectonic plate shifts like that, you are probably most likely going to see a shift in other tectonic plates on the Ring of Fire, which Costa Rica is. So shout out to all my friends and peeps in Costa Rica. Keep safe. Florida orders dairy to mislabel all-natural skim milk with imitation label to mislead consumers. That's right. A legislator here in Florida, during a hearing, Chief Judge Robert Hinkle of the U.S. District Court for Northern Florida said, "It's hard to call this imitation milk. It came right out of the cow. Anyone who reads imitation skim milk would think it didn't come out of a cow." Well, he's right. To me, that's common sense. But as we see, Monsanto and other lobbying parties do not want organic and food like that out there. So this is something. With that, we're going to get started with our daily quote of the day. And the daily quote goes a little something like this: highly evolved people have their own conscience as pure law. Again, highly evolved people have their own conscience as pure law. That quote from Lao Tzu, Lautzu. That is from thewisdomwarrior.com. With that, we're going to get started with our daily download. Ryan Matthew Durnick is not able to join us today. So with that, I'm going to go over the latest news and updates, and I do have to report that yesterday's show was not recorded. We had a Skype update or something like that on the back end. So unfortunately, the show is not recorded, so we're going to have to redo the show yesterday. I do apologize to Kelly and also to Portal to Ascension, to Neil, that came on the show and really had an amazing interview and radio show. So we apologize for that, but that was not recorded. So we are back live today, so I'm going to go over some of the latest news and headlines. Ryan Matthew Durnick is on a interview call right now. He's trying to get a job, so he just messaged me he's not going to be able to join us. So with that, I'll go over some latest news and updates. One of the latest and greatest things in the news today is the huge tsunami that was about, that is a story you should pay attention to. Imagine that on real milk, they're going to put imitation, but on cloned milk, which is coming from cloned cows, cloned meat, cloned products, are not required by the FDA to be labeled as clone. What a paradigm we're living in. Next article, the pharmaceutical industry is one of the most loathed sectors in the United States, sitting alongside big oil and the federal government. That's right. People in the U.S. hate big pharma, study finds. The title says 43% of participants in a survey by Gallup reported negative views on the industry compared to 35% who expressed positive news. This leaves the industry with a negative net positive rating, -8 in 2015. Well, we all know that pharmaceutical drugs are not good for you. We do not want them. And there is a natural cure and remedy for any type of dis-ease you can possibly think of. So that's what I have to say about pharmaceutical companies. U.S. gold reserves bottom out as Europe's banks seek financial independence. European central banks keep demanding the return of their gold bullion from the vaults of the Federal Reserve in New York. Well, that sounds like a pretty okay request. Reducing the gold stockpile kept under the streets of Manhattan to its lowest level in decades. Let's not forget, after 9/11, all the gold bullion in the big vault under the World Trade Center buildings, when they went down there, the vault doors were